Welcome back to Huffoto Presents Beyond the Lens, the podcast. My name is Brian Huff, and today I'm actually sitting down with Chris Mullins, filmmaker, director. What are you? You're a lot of things.
Filmmaker, director, writer, lighting.
Oh, that's right, because you're lighting and writing and...
Lighting, writing, directing, filming. I don't know.
You're kind of like me, jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, exactly. Used to be a car guy for a little bit, and
I was a car stereo guy, so that makes sense. So, you've actually got a motion picture on Amazon, is it? Give Up the Ghost. You got two on there.
Yeah, I got two on there, actually. I've got Give Up the Ghost, which is the first feature-length film that I directed. It's a drama we shot here in Selmer, all across McNairy County. And then I have a documentary on there as well called The Hunt, which I filmed in South Africa in 2015. That's just a little short expose about trophy hunting in South Africa.
Wow, so that's almost a decade old. That's crazy.
Oh, shit, yeah. It's about a decade old.
You know what? Everybody's been making me feel old this week because it was my birthday, so I get to pay back. Just everybody else, I'm like, what have they done a long time ago? So it's interesting to me. Of course, you're familiar with the Comic-Con photography and everything. I mean, we've worked together in a music video with the Low Blow out of Nashville. Mm-hmm. So if you guys out there haven't heard of the Low Blow, you need to go check them out because their music is awesome. And those guys were super fun to work with, too.
Oh, yeah, just absolutely incredible to work with. Actually, should be working with them again here soon with the new album.
Fun.
New album is being recorded now. So.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I wanted to get those guys down here, too. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that I think about is just the all-encompassing artistic world. I'm just a small piece of the photography, but then you've got filmmaking, and you've got with cosplay, you've got all these people like we had a seamstress on the show, and now looking at independent filmmaking, which kind of brings all these worlds together. I guess being a director, writer, I guess is it beneficial, you feel like, to have a little bit of knowledge in all these areas, so when you come to a film, you're like, okay, you've got a better idea of their vision and how.
Yeah, I would say because coming up, with a lot of the stuff that I've personally done, like even with Give Up the Ghost, especially when we shot it, with it being in 2020 during the height of COVID.
Oh, wow.
When we shot that. So, but yeah, you kind of had to become a jack of all trades and just know a little bit about everything, like you're talking about, and that's why, I've done a lot of the lighting stuff myself, or and the other thing too is, and I've been lucky with a lot of the projects that I've worked on, which kind of just touching on what you were just saying is actually, befriending all these different people like yourself, or I know a guy that does set design work, like just build sets for a living,
right,
and stuff like that, and because you do have to. And sound, that's one of the...
Oh, gosh. To me, and, of course, my wife being in the work that she's in, she does so many events. And one thing I learned immediately, if something's going to go wrong, it's sound. And it seems like it should be the simplest thing, sound, and it's the most complicated, it seems like, depending on, of course, now when we're talking about music, and when you bring in live music and stuff, that's a whole nother level of nightmare. But sound is, it's insanely difficult.
It is insanely difficult, and that is the one thing I've never mastered. I know enough to be dangerous and just to screw everything up.
Yeah, that's...
But as a film guy...
Right there with you.
If you're going to be a film guy, 9 out of 10... small little independent projects have just terrible sound on them.
And I noticed too, talking about that, we'll watch bad video. How many found footage films have we watched with bad video that we absolutely love? But if something has bad audio, you're out.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'll immediately turn it off, and I you just it's the one thing that is the most overlooked, but it's the only thing that is inexcusable for a audience.
Yeah, and that's always fascinated me with movies. When you see behind the scenes, I'm always interested in where's that microphone. That's a game I play with myself, and it was so funny. I'll never forget this. My oldest son and I went to see a film in the theaters called Napoleon Dynamite. And in the theaters, I don't know, I guess things are cropped differently when they come to video. But in the theater, and you won't see this in the video, I've never seen this in a video edition, but in the theater, the whole time, the boom was in the shot. And it was hilarious. And I thought it was on purpose.
Yeah, I was about to say, it could have been on purpose, just knowing that film. Like that.
Yeah, but in the actual video editions, it's not there. And, of course, when we walked out from seeing that movie, I can't remember why we went and saw it. But I remember walking out of the theater and both of us looking at each other and going, what did we just see? I think the whole hour drive home was us just debating on if we loved it or hated it because we really couldn't decide.
I think, actually, it's funny you say that because I remember the first time I ended up watching Napoleon Dynamite is I had pretty much the same reaction after the movie was over with. I was like, that's either the greatest thing I've ever seen or I hated it and I don't know what.
Right.
And then upon, rewatching it, it gets funnier every time.
Oh, no, absolutely. And to me, it's almost, I feel like it's a cult classic at this point because it's just so funny. Going back to your filmmaking, what point did you reach in your life when you were like, you know what, I want to do this? This is something, was it an inspirational moment, maybe a movie you saw that were like, I want to do this?
So it's, actually, so I've always loved film, even since I was a child. So like, the very first thing I ever saw, first time going to a movie theater, I forgot how old I would have been, but it was when they did the re-release of the original Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that was the first thing I ever saw in a movie theater as a kid.
Me too, but I'm old enough that I saw the first time. Now, the first one that came out, I was 3 years old. I don't remember seeing the movie in the theater, but it's interesting what I do remember, and it's the walk into the theater with my older sister and the lights. This, of course, the big building with the massive neon lights outside because it was some big marquee theater back in 1975 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I remember that distinctly, and I was like, I always wondered what it was because I didn't know what frame of reference. And one day I mentioned it to her, and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" She's like, "That's when I took you to see the first Star Wars movie. You were only 3 years old."
Well, it's funny you say that actually because I was just recently talking to this with Max, who is I've done a lot of my film work has been partnered up with him.
Right.
And we were talking about this because I can remember going into that theater and just being just so amazed at just how big the screen was.
Right.
In my mind, I was like, this is the largest TV I've ever seen. and then, but also just like the lighting and stuff, like even to this day, when I go into a movie theater, it's, I don't know how to describe it. It's like if you've seen like the Nicole Kidman AMC ad, she's like, there's that indescribable feeling when the lights begin to dim and stuff. But it actually is kind of true to me.
Yeah.
I hate phrasing it this way, but it almost feels like this, like it's almost like going into like a church. It's like a holy place to me. Is like going
it's almost a spiritual experience sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, I guess I can kind of relate that from photo shoot. I mean, I still lose sleep night before photo shoot even after 17 years because your mind is, and when you train yourself to change your thinking from I'm nervous about this, or I'm worried about this, to I'm excited about this, because those are the same chemicals in your brain.
Yeah.
And changing your mindset to realize, oh, I'm actually excited for this. This is good.
Well, you saying that too, that makes me think about, on some of the projects I've done, like, like some of the documentaries and short films and stuff like that. Like, I've been, leading up to it, just so excited, so gung ho. And I remember when we were about to shoot Give Up the Ghost, it was the day before that. I just had to go sit by myself for like a day, like almost 24 hours.
Yeah.
And like Max and some of the other crew guys and everything were like reaching out, like, "Hey, where are you? Like, we really need." I was like, "I just need a little bit of time." And I guess it was just knowing, it was just the nervousness of like knowing the magnitude of like, hey, this is actually going to be a feature film that if
right.
And we actually have somebody that has invested money into this. If this isn't good,
I find too, and I know if you can relate to this, that when I'm at that level of nervousness, not nervousness, see, I'm already saying the wrong word. When I'm at that level of excitement, and it is nerves to an extent, but it's excited nerves, I feel like I function better than if I'm completely comfortable. And
well, see, it's a thing, like, because I don't know, because I even felt this way, like, slightly, like when we did like the low blow video shoot. I think it's there's something about it that unlocks a little bit more creativity from you. Like, I don't know, it's almost like and maybe you feel the same way, but it's almost like when you feel that way, it actually kind of focuses you in more so on what you're doing. Like, you shut out everything else.
And I think that feeds, though, into the other people. And I think that day, thinking back to that, because I just tell you, I had so much fun. I was having a ball. I mean, I was like a kid playing in the woods, 12 years old, and we just happened to have cameras.
Yeah.
And people that would do what we told them to, get in this hole and let us throw dirt on you. I mean, go watch the music video. It actually happened. You know what? I'm actually going to put links in the show notes to this podcast, to that video, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. But, just the fact that we were all, and we talked about this later on, how it was, what if we did this, blah, 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 and yes, and. It wasn't a no, but.
Yeah.
It was a yes, and environment, and everyone was so excited to be there and do something. And I think that, that energy has a big part of it.
And that's something that, like, with a lot of, like, like, stuff that I've done, like, I always try to tell people, I was like, I really want this to be a collaborative effort.
Right.
Like, like with that, I was like, hey, let's do this shot. And then you or like Melina or somebody that was like working there with me, they were like, hey, what if we try this? I'm like, like, let's try it.
Yeah, let's try it. I mean, because the great thing about digital now is, we had plenty of memory cards and batteries, luckily weren't shooting on Black Magics yet, so we weren't going to run out of hard drive space.
But, if we'd have been doing this like in the 70s on
film, right,
it might have been like, let's plan this out to a T. But I think it's a lot more fun to just try stuff and just see what happens. Like, even with like with that shoot, or like with Give Up the Ghost, and actually pretty much everything I've done for the most part, like, I don't really do like storyboards or anything like that. Like, I know what I want it to look like, but then I'm like, well, once we get there, let's just play around. Let's just move the camera in a weird way, or let's, and like even in Give Up the Ghost, because that film is about half of that film was completely improv.
Wow.
We had a script that was 25 pages, and then we just wrote, these other scenes will happen. We'll just improv it when we do it.
I think a lot of people don't realize that, and it's interesting you mentioned that. Matthew McConaughey, of course, was in, what was that film that he did with, when he was in the car, Dazed and Confused. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so Dazed and Confused, he teaches a film class on that film, because in the original script, his character from that film had one line. And all the other scenes that happened with Matthew McConaughey's character in that movie happened on set.
Yeah.
And he uses that to teach this class to show what you just said is when you go in with a script, 90% of the time, you're not coming back out with the same thing. You're coming back out with whatever happens that day. I watched Gangs in New York last night because I'm a huge Daniel Day-Lewis fan, and I'm very sad he's retired. But his acting just captivates me in a way, the way he uses his voice and everything like that. And I've always wondered how much of that was actually improvised on set and how much was written for.
Because I think, you know, with a lot of people, you know, just like studying other people's works, is I think there are a lot of directors that like welcome improv just wholeheartedly, like, you know. But there's certain ones that are, you know, very much you are going to say what is in this script.
Right.
And, like, I know an interesting example to me about that is a guy that you think would have a lot of improv in his movies is Kevin Smith. He does not.
Really?
Yeah. Chasing Amy is a perfect example of this. What he did with Chasing Amy is him, Ben Affleck, Jason Lee, and the actress, I can't remember what her name was now.
Oh, gosh, and I met her in Arkansas last year. What was her name? She actually has a restaurant now in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, man.
Or no, I'm sorry, Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Well, anyway.
It wasn't Sedaris? Was her last name? Oh my gosh! Now I'm messing up.
I'm gonna have to pull up IMDb.
But I know exactly who you're talking about. That's going to drive me insane. I want to say no. I'm not even going to say it. I know I'm wrong. But
Joey Lauren Adams.
Wow, I was way off.
Yeah, we were But
that's sad. I had just met her last year too.
But yeah, with that movie, like before they shot any frame of that movie, they sat down and they rehearsed every scene of that movie over and over again like you would a play.
Wow.
And because Kevin Smith is very much...
That's interesting to know because I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. And funny thing, Chasing Amy is probably my least favorite of his films.
Really?
And it's probably one of his best, but it for some reason is one of my least. I don't know why.
See, I think...
But the original Clerks, I love that one so much. I hadn't seen any of the sequels, but the original Clerks film for me was just the pinnacle. I just loved it so much.
I would say, like, and I think, like, with, like, Clerks and, like, some of the other stuff, like, he does a little bit more improv. I know that Chasing Amy specifically was rehearsed down to a T. But
I'll have to rewatch that one now, especially that I'm older. Because I saw it when it came out. That's been a long time ago.
Like I said, I think that film is incredible. You know, he was considered for an Oscar for that movie. It just didn't happen. But
Did not know that.
But yeah, no. Yeah, I think Clerks is amazing. I love Clerks too.
What was great for the first Clerks for me was sitting down and watching it. And I just put it on, and my youngest son just happened to come and sit down in the room, and I didn't say anything to him. And I let it play. He had no context for what he was watching. He had no idea what it was. And about 15 minutes into it, he looks at me really confused and goes, "Is this a documentary?" And I sat there for a moment, and I was like, "It is, but it was filmed while it was happening."
Yeah.
This was the 90s. And I was like, you could have walked into any convenience store and had one of these conversations or pelted a man with cigarettes. Like, it literally, any of this could have happened in the 90s somewhere.
Yeah.
Especially in the video store.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. But, you know, really thinking back on how the first Clerks movie was shot, you could easily take that as a documentary.
Yeah. They should just repackage it and not tell anybody until like Clerks, you know, a look back at the 90s and just re-release it in a new box.
I will say, since we're down a Kevin Smith rabbit hole here, I went and saw Clerks 3 last year.
I know, and I didn't get to see it with you, and I'm still upset.
Because after the movie was over, we had a Q&A with Kevin Smith. Right after the movie, like he was there the whole time.
Wow.
And it was incredible. I think 3 questions got asked because Kevin Smith is a very long-winded man. But like I said,
it's cool though because I think you can tell he's really passionate about his work, and so I could understand where. Because I could be that way about photography. I will talk until I realize that the person in front of me, I've seen them physically age. And I'm like, oh, I've spoken way too long.
Well, it's like, I think, was it when it was right after doing the low blow shoot. I think I came here to show you like the...
Right.
Like one of
the dailies.
And I don't know, I think... I remember sitting here, like, it was daylight when I got here, and I think it was like midnight or 1
Oh, it was easily midnight. Didn't we even go get food? I think we went and ate.
Yeah. We went down to the Mexican place.
Yeah, we sure did.
And I was like, oh, yeah, we've sat here just and talked nothing.
And then I think we closed the Mexican restaurant down. We're like, well, let's just go back to the studio. That would have been a great podcast episode. That would have been a Joe Rogan length podcast.
Yeah, a 6-hour podcast would have been.
Yeah, that would have been marathon. So, what kind of new project you got? Any new projects you can talk about, or anything you're looking into or thinking about, or?
So there's a
actually, before I ask that, let me go back in time for a second and ask you, what's your favorite to shoot? Something that's fictitious or something that's documentary? Because that was stuck in my head, and I should have asked that first.
So. There's something about doing a documentary, especially in real time, that is so fun to me. Mm-hmm. Because most of the times when I've done a documentary, it's been very run and gun and just very fly by the seat of your pants. Let's just,
Right.
But with fiction, I enjoy that a lot more just because there's more creativity to what you can do. Like, there's pros and cons to both of it, but I almost, I don't know, with how I try to approach, fiction is, like, with the same attitude that I have like, with a documentary. Yep. And which, I think is also a way more fun way to go about it. Because most of the documentaries I've done, they're not been like... it's not really just talking heads and then, with archival footage, it's always been like very like with the Africa documentary, for example, like that was just me with a camera. And then there was one other camera that just followed me as I was just running around like the savannah or whatever of Africa and like talking to people and getting charged at by elephants and all that stuff. That didn't make it into that cut, but
so going forward from, and it's funny because you mentioned, having more creativity and sort of more license to be creative with the fantasy and everything. I feel the same way about photography, and I think that what has drawn me to cosplay is, number one, I've got a subject that wants to be in front of the camera, but number two, they're creative. They have a vision in their mind, and we get to collaborate to bring that into the world. So I think. But at the same time, I feel when I'm photographing a family or something, I feel more documentarian. And so I'm like, I need to make this look, a certain way. Somebody's going to open a photo book 30 years from now, and they need to look the way they looked. And
and like
I'm representing truth, I guess you'd say, versus having creative license to kind of go crazy.
I've actually never really thought about it that way, but that is true because, like, with the documentaries, like, you want to, obviously show everything that's going on,
right?
And I guess the main difference between like you doing like a family photo shoot and me doing a documentary is like most of the time if I'm interviewing somebody, it doesn't really matter. I'm not trying to think about how they're going to be perceived, but,
right?
But, obviously not trying to do hit pieces either. But,
well, I know. But my thought is I'm like, I feel lucky because I only have to worry about one frame. You've got 24 a second.
But yeah, with the I hadn't thought about that with the cosplay though, because that's a very actually kind of similar thing. Because if I'm doing like working with an actor on something, it's very much like what you're doing.
We should do a cosplay documentary, and then we can have the freedom to
Yeah,
do a documentary that could be fictitious, sort of a fear and loathing in cosplay, if you will.
Sorry. What was the other question?
Oh, anything new coming up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, any new projects that you can talk about? I know a lot of times there's a lot of hush hush, because people don't realize the behind the scenes that goes into making things happen. And the wrong person hearing the wrong thing can destroy a production.
And I can say there is, apart from like some music videos that I've been working on, which the newest one of those should be releasing soon. It should release alongside the album for Jack Iyer.
Okay.
But then, apart from that, there is a documentary. I don't want to go too much into it just because I'm still very much in the pre-planning stages of that. And then, there's a few more interesting, like just more narrative feature films that I've been, we're currently writing right now. Me and Max have been talking back and forth. There's a couple that I'm really excited about trying to get made, and he's got a couple that he's wanting to do as well that I'll probably either be producing or with him as well. Like he's currently trying to write a found footage movie right now.
Okay.
That we're going to make very weird, like David Lynch in found footage, which is going to be fun.
Dude, I love some David Lynch. I love it. He has such a very I think there's actually a master class on David Lynch's style of movie and stuff that you can take online. But his stuff fascinates me, especially with the older. I love like Twin Peaks was mind blowing, and Lost Highway was one of my favorite.
Lost Highway, I love Mulholland Drive.
Yep.
When I was in film school, like I remember we watched, like I don't think we watched the entire thing, but we watched most of Eraserhead.
Yeah.
And just I say underrated, but I think everybody who knows David Lynch thinks he's an absolute legend. But
absolutely, but I could also see where he's a director whose style you would either love or hate, because he is very, what's the word? He's very unique.
Yeah.
There's no one quite pulls off a film or a series like he does. He has his own signature on the film in a way.
Well,
which is good and bad, I guess.
Well, I think, and I could have the exact one wrong, but that he was originally, George Lucas had originally picked him to direct, I think it was Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting. They should actually just go back and do that now.
Yeah, what's like Tarantino trying to do that Star Trek movie, like
right.
But
right. There was one of the previous podcasts I just spoke with Damian Blue, and we talked about the Hulk, and he mentioned the Hulk as being very influential to him when he was young, because the Hulk knew what incredible power he had, but in order to tap into it, he had to be angry. And he spent most of his time alone to protect everybody else from him while he learned how to control this power that he had. And I was like, that's really interesting thought to me. Hulk would have been a very interesting villain.
Oh yeah.
Why is there not a Hulk villain arc? That would be a really interesting multiverse kind of thing, is to what if he just decided, you know what, I'm mad and I'm just going to take my anger out on for whatever reason I feel is just, and he becomes more of a villain. And so just thinking about these, David Lynch doing Return of the Jedi, thinking of these possibilities of things that could have happened is extremely interesting to me. These possible other multiverse things.
Sorry. Yeah, we other projects though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one that I'm I've been kind of writing a little bit on and talk a little bit about it is, or I'll phrase it this way, I guess. One thing that I'm really wanting to do is specifically tell stories like about my hometown, like the Selmer, McNairy County area, or just West Tennessee and northern Mississippi, like just.
There's so many stories here.
Yeah, and it's just like and that was a big reason why even though COVID was going on, and that was one reason we tried to give up the ghost down here.
Right.
But I love to highlight like this area because I think it's
I think it's very underrated and overlooked.
Yeah.
And which it is good and bad because I think when people discover it from themselves, especially through the legends and things that exist down here, then they actually visit and find out it was real. And a lot of times they don't believe it. And I'm like, no, this stuff like this happened down here. Like there's some crazy stories down here and some amazing people and some pretty scary people, which I'm sure are everywhere. But it seems like to me, I don't know what the word. There's the southern flavor to these stories, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
It makes them very interesting.
Well, it's like I don't know, somebody that I love reading about and stuff is like William Faulkner.
Right.
Which really didn't live all that far away from here.
Oh no.
He lived in Oxford.
Yeah, just 2 hours away.
And like my granddad, when he was alive, like he worked on his house, on William Faulkner's house.
Oh wow!
And but going back and reading like William Faulkner's works and just incredible works because I love the Southern Gothic genre, and that's something I always have really wanted to tap into, like from a filmmaking side of things, is really showing like the Southern Gothic genre. But it's interesting because I was just thinking about how I'm saying I really want to do stories like here.
Right.
So when William Faulkner, he originally left Mississippi and went to France to become a writer in France because that's where over in Paris you had like Ernest Hemingway and
sure.
That whole movement that was happening, like everybody that was going to be a famous writer all went there, and Faulkner went over there. And I can't remember if it was Hemingway or who it was. I want to say it was Hemingway. Anyway, they met William Faulkner, and after just talking to him, like having a few conversations with him, he was like, you need to go back to Mississippi and write that because that's what you know.
Right, yeah. And there's so much. I mean, even back then, I'm sure, today, doubly so. Oh, yeah. But, and I feel like too, though, when you're so close to something, I always reference this. It's like people that live at the beach that never go to the beach. So I think him probably going to Paris and talking to somebody else and making him realize, hey, what you've left behind, you need to go back because you left the gold behind.
Yeah. And, and like with some of my travels and stuff, like, like doing stuff in Africa or, I also like do a lot of work up in Nashville and stuff. And anytime I come back to Selmer, like it's there is a sense of like when you come down here, I'm like, yeah, I'm like comfortable down here, but I also I know everybody, like
sure,
right before I came down here, I went to a restaurant down the street and walked in, and 5 people said, "Hey, Chris," as soon as I walked into the door.
Right.
Like there's something about that, that I love. That's one reason I like being down here.
It's like living in. And this is going to date me a little bit. It's like living in Cheers. So like, you want to go where everybody knows your name. There is a comfortability in that. But I like too, and I'm sure you can relate to this. Is every now and stepping out of that. And getting to where you're absolutely nobody.
Oh, yeah.
And I did stand-up comedy for a few months on the road in places where no one knew me. And that was very interesting.
Yeah.
So you living in Nashville, same
Yeah.
thing. You can get out and do things. Be like, Chris, who?
Yeah.
And like it, but that anonymity, I think, sometimes gives you some freedom.
Yeah, it gives you some freedom to really like explore and do that. Like, you know, there was a short film that I made like right out of film school that we actually did a showing of it at a comedy club in Nashville. Like, did a screening of it up there, and it was. That's the only screening we've ever done of that short film. It's like scrubbed from the internet now. Because,
Now that's hard to scrub something from the internet.
but yeah, like I said, because I'm not like super proud of it, but it was a fun thing to make. It was just it was a mockumentary actually about a baseball team.
Oh, some of my favorite things on the internet are mockumentaries. There's this. Have you ever watched Documentary Now?
Yeah,
Bill
yeah.
Hader and Fred Armisen, all those guys.
Absolutely
The
adore
one on Grey Gardens.
Yeah.
I found that one with no context and watched it, and I was like, what is this? And then I found the actual Grey Gardens documentary and watched it because of the mockumentary. And I laughed harder through the documentary, realizing what these guys had brought to life. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
That show, actually, it's funny you say that. When I made that mockumentary, one of the inspirations I had to do it was from watching Documentary Now.
Yeah, if you've not seen, I think it's on Netflix. Documentary Now is fantastic.
One of my favorite things is they do one that's a parrot, because most of their stuff is parodies of actual documentaries,
right?
And they do it so well. It's almost
it's so well.
Shot. But one of my favorite things I saw them do was they did and this is actually what inspired that one short film that I made that we've since then scrubbed. They did a parody of a Vice documentary where like they were going to go find the Mexican drug cartel.
The pre-Disney Vice.
Yeah. And but it has like Bill Hader and Fred Armisen, and every time they go down to Mexico, they do something stupid and end up getting themselves killed. And then
I saw that one.
Yeah,
that one was so great.
Because then Vice, which is being led by Jack Black, playing the Shane Smith character, they keep sending new reporters down there, but it's just Fred Armisen and Bill Hader wearing a fake beard this time.
I think those may be two of the most creative people that I've seen. And there's nothing better for me back in the day when Bill Hader and Fred Armisen would be on Saturday Night Live, and one of them would start to break the other one.
Oh, yeah.
So the other one would double down, and it was just that, for me being a kid, the only thing that ever topped that was the Carol Burnett show, when Tim Conway and Harvey Korman would go at each other. I don't think there's ever been a comic duo like those two. And the best thing is when they break character, it's the funniest thing you'll ever see.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think it's specifically with Bill Hader and Fred Armisen. It's like the Californians.
Yes, I showed that to my youngest son the other day, and clips on YouTube for like 20 minutes. And my son was like, how is this funny? This is not funny. He's like, it's the same bit over and over and over again. And I'm like, it's hilarious.
Well, and you talk about Bill Hader too. Like that's a dude that has just had like an incredible, impressive career too. I mean, not with just like Saturday Night Live and
his show Barry on HBO, where he plays a dramatic character, a killer. I mean, it's so insane how you can flip that switch.
And it's incredible. And then also, like, while he was doing a lot of this stuff, he was the writing consultant for South Park too. So he was working on South Park.
No clue. That's hilarious.
Because actually, there's a documentary on HBO. It's called 6 Days the Air, because it follows them doing an episode of South Park, because they do it 6 days. They make each episode 6 days before it actually airs on TV.
Oh my gosh.
It's insane how it follows the whole process. But in that, like, it shows like when they're in the writing room, Bill Hader sitting in the corner just throwing jokes out to him.
Oh wow!
And some of the characters, that the little B characters and stuff, are sometimes voiced by Bill Hader.
Wow! I did not realize that. I've not seen that show in so long. Another show that I remember when it first started, and everybody's like, "What is this?" and it really was it Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They pretty much created a genre. It feels like with the brand of comedy that they do. And it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's for those that it is. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I think, and those are two dudes too that have weirdly even been inspiring to me in a weird way.
Oh yeah,
it's just because two dudes from a small town in Colorado, and they made the Spirit of Christmas short, and that just became a viral video before the internet even existed, and then George Clooney, it somehow ended up with a VHS copy of it, and then was like, let's find these guys and get them a show.
Wow, that's so crazy. That reminds me of like Andy Milonakis,
yes.
which nobody's going to know who that is. But he was basically YouTube before there was YouTube, or Jackass before there was Jackass, doing stupid videos and putting them on the internet. And
just hilarious.
When you had to download them, you couldn't even stream them.
Yeah.
You had to download them to something and hope you had the hard drive space that would hold it, and then hope you had a video card that could replay it, 480 by 640 or whatever. I mean, like, talk about the origins of the YouTube world.
Yeah, I mean, just that in general, like YouTube has become such just a good platform for even.
I have YouTube
filmmakers.
Premium just because I'm so addicted to YouTube, and I don't want to watch ads. I actually pay for YouTube. It's so important to me.
I just recently did myself, actually, just because I started just looking around, and there's like some people who are just making films and uploading there, and they're some of the best films that are being made.
I actually complained in one of these podcasts about the production value of YouTube because people have gotten so good at producing YouTube content that I feel like I'm watching big studio productions now. Well, I'm like, look, dude, you've learned how to do lighting. You've got a sound guy. They're scripting. They're storyboarding. I'm like, what happened to, and now people probably hate this or love this or whatever, but I was a huge Casey Neistat fan. I used to do a daily vlog that was inspired by Casey Neistat.
Yeah.
I loved I love still how he tells a story. And I think how he is what I call an organic storyteller. I don't even think he's aware of his own process.
Yeah.
It just happens. And I think that's what captivates people to people like that. They could just tell a story.
Well, and actually, this I was just having this conversation just the other day. There's a guy that was working with me up in Nashville, and he was working with me doing like some lighting, and but he came up to me the other day. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna have to take a break. I can't do the lighting stuff anymore." And he was working for me. He was doing that full time, and like was a salary position and all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh man," I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, you know how I've been freelancing, like editing for this one YouTube channel that does like true crime stuff." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, they've offered me a full-time job. They're paying me about twice the amount that
Oh, wow.
I'm making doing this lighting."
See, kids, dreams do come true.
So, if you want to make like, a really good living and live in Nashville, you can just edit YouTube videos.
Wow.
And I know I've got friends that are out in LA right now, just pursuing stand-up and filmmaking as well. But they are living like, around the block from like Quentin Tarantino's theater, and how they're paying the bills is editing YouTube videos.
Wow.
There's so much money in.
Well, that makes sense
Yeah.
because your YouTube creators now have to constantly produce content. They don't have time to be the one and only.
Yeah.
There's no way because they've got so many other. I mean, they got to constantly create, and I think in that point too, YouTube, in becoming a career, you have to be careful because, there goes the daily Selmer sirens going by. I was getting to worry. We hadn't heard sirens in a while. But yeah, YouTube is so intense now because,
Yeah.
and I'm part of the problem, I guess, because I come back every day and I'm like, what's new? What's new? What's new?
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah.
I'm like, oh, this was uploaded 8 months ago. It's old. I'm not watching it. Like, I'm terrible. I catch myself. I'm like, oh, I need to go back and watch that because it's not really old. It's just.
Yeah. Like, well, like there's certain YouTube channels that I'll watch, and then like, I'm like, oh wait, here's a video I hadn't seen. Oh, that was 2 weeks ago. Well, that's out of date now.
Yeah, and I have that same thought process, especially if I'm watching something on, of course, being a photographer, I'll go in there and be like, well, what's everybody thinking about this piece of gear or this piece of equipment, which recently I've quit doing because what I've learned about YouTube is if you're a quote unquote gear reviewer, it's so rare to see a bad review. And I've bought so many pieces of equipment that I've not been happy with. And I've based a lot of my stuff on what I've seen on YouTube. And I'm like, wait a minute, and I get a lot of them aren't sponsored or anything, but at the same time, when you're producing a piece of content, it's kind of hard to say anything. You don't know who's watching.
Yeah.
So it is kind of hard to just put your own 2 cents on something and be like, well, this brand new piece of gear that this big major company just put out is actually a piece of garbage, and you probably shouldn't waste your money on it.
Yeah. But it's funny you say that too, because like a thing that I was doing for the longest time too, anytime a movie would come out, the first thing I would do is go, oh, let me go watch like, I don't know, like a Chris Stuckman review or something like that of this movie, or are these all these different reviews of them and stuff. And I don't know, I had the kind of what you're talking about, like you had to quit watching like
the critics.
Reviews. Like I had to quit watching these critic reviews because I would watch it before I'd ever go watch a movie, and then you have this preconceived notion,
right?
And really at this point now, I will go watch a movie now, and then if it's a movie I really like, I'll still go back and see like what other people had to say, or at least check like the Rotten Tomatoes score or something.
Right.
But after the fact, like, 'cause now I don't even want to read anything.
I like seeing a movie with no context.
Yeah.
And one of the recent movies I saw was Triangle of Sadness, where I just went into it completely blind.
I remember you called me.
Yeah,
right
I called you.
It.
Because I had already just completely annoyed my wife to death. I'm sure I ruined this movie for her forever because I caught myself talking through the film as I was not actually believing what I was seeing.
Yeah.
It was so good. And I was like, is this really happening? Because this seems like this would be really complicated. And after it was over, I was like, nah, that movie couldn't have been that good. So I Googled it, to see what other people were saying. And see, all of a sudden I saw, oh, it's been nominated for this award and nominated for this award and this is something. And I was like, oh, so it was all this, like, okay, I was right in my think. I didn't even trust my own thoughts because I was like, is this really this good? And that's why I called you, because I was like, who's going to appreciate this? I was like, who can I talk to that's going to understand even what I'm saying about this film? And you still probably haven't watched it.
No.
I knew it. Dang it.
But I remember when you called me, I was like, because I'd been trying to get, they were showing it at a theater up in Nashville.
That would have been so great.
And I kept wanting to see it because I'd been keeping up with the trailers and everything.
Right.
Because I went and watched something just right before that. So yeah, I just went and watched something right before that, and at the Belcourt Theater up in Nashville, and I just remember seeing the trailer for it, and the trailer was the most incredible thing I've ever
really?
seen. Well, the trailer, it showed Woody Harrelson, like,
right,
sitting there at the helm of the ship, and then the rest of the trailer was just people throwing up.
Yeah, and that
was all the trailer was.
Okay, the people throwing up part was one of my favorites parts of the movie. And the fact that they had Woody Harrelson in it, I think, was so genius because it probably got people to go see it, like me, that thought it was a Woody Harrelson kind of movie. It absolutely is not. He's perfect, I thought, for the role. It is not a Woody Harrelson film. And so, as a matter of fact, you don't even see him, I think, until 60% through the film. He shows up.
If again, because I haven't watched it yet, so correct me if I'm wrong here. because if I'm correct, it's one of the funniest premises for Woody Harrelson character ever, is that he's an American communist and there's a Russian capitalist.
Yes, and they argue drunk argument, and it is hilarious. I don't want to say anymore. I mean, it just gives scenes away.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies too. Usually, I'm like, I'm not going to talk anymore because I'm going to overhype it, and you're going to see it and go, dude, that movie you talked about for a year was trash. But this is one of the few movies that I'm like, nah, I can't overhype this movie. You have to see it. You literally have to see it. I started watching it by myself again the other day because there's no way my wife will watch it with me again because I ruined it so much the first time. And I'm not like that. Usually I'm pretty quiet if I sit down to watch a movie.
Yeah.
But this one, I was spellbound by it, and I kept, laughing at little things I was catching. And she's like, what are you laughing at? I'm like, well, it's not funny. But there's this part that did you notice this happened? And this only happens when something else connected to it in the film is occurring in the background. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I'm sorry. And I would have to rewind and replay because I just ruined 5 minutes. And yeah.
I remember, like being in a relationship with a girl or something, and like we go to the movie theater and stuff, and or like going out on dates and stuff, and they'd be like, I hate going to the movies with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, why? Like, and like, yeah, you kind of ruin the experience.
That's what I did to this movie. I tore this movie to pieces, not in like a critical way, but in actually breaking down all the mechanisms that I felt were being used to communicate different metaphors to me.
Yeah.
And then actually, later on watching some videos and things that actually backed up what I thought I was thinking made me feel really good. I was like, I must know something about movies. Like I felt like, which I think honestly, it was just done so well that anybody that's an enjoyer of movies would get what's happening. It's not like I'm an idiot savant of film, but I maybe an idiot, but I just was so drawn in by this movie and how there were different things in the movie that became characters. The sound was a character in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it was done so well that different things happened in the sound, and you knew you were in a certain place and time based on something happening with the sound. And I don't want to give it away because I want you to watch it, and I want to have a conversation one day just about this movie.
Well, there's another movie I actually just went and watched recently, and nobody has seen this movie. I've talked to other people.
Okay.
Nobody has watched it. When you look it up online, there's some reviews for it, but
Okay.
I went in blind just because I was like, I'm going to go to the movie theater today, and I watched this film called Divinity. And I don't even know how to describe to you what the plot of this movie is, because if I tried to, you would be like, you are insane.
So it's just in theaters. It's not. Is it in
It's
no
not on
platforms
streaming
yet?
yet.
Okay. When it hits platforms, because this is a weird thing about me. I don't like the movie theater experience. I'm weird. I like watching things on my couch at home, where I can hit pause and get up and walk around because my attention span is that of a fire ant.
Well,
So if you paralyze me for 2.5 hours to watch a film, you've got something.
I'll tell you about this film, Divinity. Stephen Dorff's in it. It's a very David Lynch-esque movie, actually.
Okay, now when Dorff shows up, something weird's going on because he shows up in the most random films. And they're always good, though.
Yeah. Well, see, and nobody's heard about this movie. I can't even remember the guy that made its name, but he... I went to a theater in Nashville on like a Friday night at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, yeah, I'll watch that. Like, that one's playing. I was the only person there. Nobody else showed up to watch this movie. I looked up like the box office of it, and like it's barely made any money.
Oh, wow.
But I no joke, I was sitting there by the end of the movie. I was just dying. Like my jaw was agape at like how creative this movie is.
Oh wow.
Because like I don't know, it deals with like these people are trying to get like a cure for like immortality. Like it's like this like drug that you take that makes you immortal.
Okay.
Then like these aliens that show up.
I think I've watched a trailer for this.
I think I may have sent you a trailer for it.
I think you did.
Because I was like, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen.
You know what? You texted me that after you saw it. You were like, watch this trailer. I would try to explain it to you, but you're going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah. Because there's a sequence at the end of the movie that I lost it. Like I was dying, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Because there's a fight scene with a character and this creature at the end, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, it's kind of hyped up throughout, but it kind of just comes out of nowhere. And I have never seen it because they do like the old school film effects. Like this was all shot on like 16 mil, like Kodak reversal stock too.
Wow.
And there's a scene towards the end of it where this one character and this creature are fighting, and when the fighting gets really intense, it very obviously cuts to like claymation shots.
Oh, what?
And then it does a zoom in, like a kung fu zoom of the character and this creature about to punch each other, but it just does this kung fu zoom and just pops up Japanese text on the bottom of the
wow.
screen.
Okay, that's bizarre. That is bizarre.
But yeah, highly recommend it.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna have to check it out as soon as it comes to streaming, which I've noticed things seem to come a little faster these days.
Oh yeah, well, I think now one good thing the COVID actually did, in my opinion, for the film industry is you now do have the option of like, because a lot of things are coming to theater and coming to,
right.
If not necessarily streaming, but VOD.
Right.
And I think that actually, in a lot of ways, has helped out a lot of like independent creators as well, because I think the avenues are now just completely wide open as far as like even self-distributing. Like we Give Up the Ghost, like we self-distributed on Amazon, but now there's other platforms that you can go through.
Oh, wow.
Like for like music artists, independent music artists, they can use like
SoundCloud, things like that.
Or you can use like DistroKid, and DistroKid will, put everything on like Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, like all these platforms. And now, and this really just has started recently, but now there's some programs that are doing that for independent filmmakers, where you give them all the footage and all the material, and then they literally take it to every streaming platform, and those streaming platforms have to review it, and then they'll either take it or they won't, and then that'll get you on Amazon. It'll get you on like Tubi.
That's so smart, because these people obviously found a niche. They're like, oh, there's no middleman for this distribution. Yeah. So it was kind of like becoming the video store for the video stores.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's right now is like a very exciting time for independent filmmaking because of stuff like that, and just like we were talking about with YouTube a while ago too. Like a lot of fantastic people are just putting just stuff straight to YouTube, but
right, yeah, and that's why it's become my favorite platform. Well, Chris, this has been awesome today. I've enjoyed this, man. I really appreciate you coming out. We'll do it again.
Oh yeah,
because I think we'll end up doing a whole lot of stuff here soon in the magazine and everywhere else, talking about feature films and stuff like that, and independent filmmaking. So I do a horror convention in July, and there's so many independent film guys there, and special effects guys, and lighting guys, makeup guys, and it's so cool seeing all the pieces that come into this, all the different art disciplines coming together to make one thing collaboratively in film. So hoping to get to explore that even more, but I think we're going to call it today.
Yeah. Like I said, if you don't stop me, I'll sit here all day talking
No,
about
I can.
film.
I can too, man. It's something I really enjoy talking about and learning about, because I don't, I know very little about the film genre itself, and I love hanging out with people that do it, and just learning more about it, because it's fascinating to me. Whereas I talked about earlier, I worry about one frame in that photograph. But, when it comes to film, you're putting together moving, frames and sound, and everything has to come together. And that takes a huge crew and collaboration. I think it's awesome. But, yeah, man, thanks for coming out today and joining me. And everybody out there in podcast land, thank you so much for listening, and hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you on the next one.